Welcome to the crossroads of the known and the unknown. This is AJ Parr's Spiritual Journalist Podcast.
We are here with Robert Christopher Cobbs. He's from the Netherlands, and he is one of the main NDE researchers that has studied the influence of NDE on religion, spirituality, and so many things. This is going to be a fun conversation. Hello, Bob.
Hi, hello. Nice to be on your show.
I've seen that you're
such
some
a
of your
long
books.
distance.
Yeah, this is long distance. This is from Colombia to the Netherlands. This is our first interview. I hope we can have several more. But you put out recently a book called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. This contains testimonies of over 100 near-death experiencers. And I think that this book, together with The Essence of Religions, which is a book that I read and I really like, is really something different from other NDE researchers. I've seen that you've gone into the influence of NDEs on religion and also on spirituality. So can you tell me more or less what led you to write these books?
Well, my interest in NDEs, that's where it started. And it started because I read the book by Raymond Moody, in which he spoke about a woman who had her NDE. And in her NDE, she had her life review. And she said, no one is judging you. And that's something you hear more often. But for me, that was the first time. That was more than 30 or almost 40 years ago. And then I thought, this is correct. This is not what the Catholic Church tells me, but I feel this is correct. And since then, I was interested in NDEs, and that got me started in trying to see what the parallels are with religions. And I looked into 5 religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, because they're a little bit alike, and then the other 3 religions like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And I drew a lot of conclusions from it, and it was fun to do because then I got to understand all the other religions that I wasn't brought up in.
Evan Alexander recommended your book, The Essence of Religions, and he told me that you did a great analysis of these 5 religions. So I got the book, I read it, and I found really interesting information. What was your main lesson about death?
After death, that's interesting. What people say in different religions. There is 2 ways you can go, or many more ways in Hinduism and in Buddhism. You can go to several other states of being. But like in Christianity and in Islam, you can go either to hell and in Christianity, purgatory, or to heaven. And, you know, if you really look into NDEs, there is only unconditional love. And I know there are also distressing NDEs, but I have, that's also in my other book, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. There's a whole chapter on distressing NDEs. And my conclusion is that these are things that come up in people's minds. You must understand that if you go over to the other phase, there is still some left of your earthly environment. So that is your own experiences, your own conscious or the collective conscious that is there, and things might pop up there. Because what I understand from distressing NDEs is that they can occur to anyone. It's not that you can say they only occur to bad people. That we don't know too much about distressing NDEs, but this is something that is a very important conclusion. You cannot say that distressing NDEs only occur to bad people. How you want to explain what bad people are. And blissful NDEs not only to good people. So there are examples in my book of just common people who have had distressing NDEs. And I have examples in my book where there are sort of bad people that have had a blissful NDEs. And as an example for the latter is maybe, you know, this guy, Danian Brinkley. He had an NDE as a consequence of a lightning strike, and he was on the phone on a landline. You must know that he says of himself in his book that he was a horrible, bad person. That's his own words. Because he stole bikes of children, he was in countless fights, but later on in life, he was killing people for an American organization in other countries. And he took out, he blew up a hotel, for instance, with 50 people in it to just take out one person. And I mean, you can imagine that that's not a very nice person. That's what he says of himself. But yet he had a very blissful NDE. Although I must say that he had a life review, and in a life review you see what you do to others as if it's done to yourself. You are the other for a small time. And he saw what he did to all these people that he killed, but not only to the people, but also to the people that were left behind, like the women and the children of these people. So what I want to say is that hell is in all religions somehow. In Judaism, it's a temporary phase. In Islam and in Christianity, it's indefinite. But if you look at NDEs, it is different. I don't believe that from my research that we can conclude that there is a hell. That's one thing. There are also quotes of NDEers that really say there is no hell and no purgatory. It was explicitly told to me, they say, in my NDE by the light, that there is no hell and no purgatory. And also someone else said, we all go home. There is no hell. We all go to the same place, home, this place of light and love.
What I've seen after interviewing a lot of people who had distressing NDEs is that as soon as you remember God or call God or
Yes.
ask for help, you are taken out of there.
This is a book written by a woman who had her NDE and had a hellish experience. And she says, when I went through this experience later in my experience, I asked for Jesus, or somehow because of that, she came out of this situation. But later she thought of, why did it happen to me? Why did it have to happen to me? And then she thought of all the things that she went through in life. She was raped. She was very afraid of getting AIDS, attracting AIDS. And some other elements. And those were the elements that she had in her NDE. So it's also what is in your mind. And that's what I try to say. And that's also what you say, in fact. And there are so many stories of people who come out of their distressing NDE because they think of the light or of the God of their religion. Oftentimes is Jesus, because most NDEs we see are from Christian origin, but there's also examples of Islamic NDEs with also distressing elements, and they come out of that too, because they think of love. So that's a very important thing.
I interviewed Kathy McDaniel, and I'm going to include the link in the description. I'm also going to include it in the end of this video, so those people who are interested in her story can get to see, can learn about it, because it's really interesting. There are also a lot of people who are afraid to talk about their distressing NDEs, and they don't. They may share it in private, but they don't want to be interviewed publicly. And I know that some people are ashamed even.
That's why it is such a brave thing of her and others to come out to show what they have seen, what they have gone through. And I think it's really brave. Also, Howard Storm, maybe you have interviewed him, or you know who he is. He had a distressing NDE and he wrote a whole book about that. I think that's so brave. yeah, it enhances also our knowledge of these experiences. So it's very important that people come out with them. But I understand that if you have had such an experience, you have something you need to work out for yourself. It's difficult.
Among these 100 near-death experiencers, did you include any from Islam? And did they did they meet Muhammad, or what were these experiences about?
There are examples of people from Islam in my book. There's also people from Buddhist and from China, from actually from all over the world. They are there. But for an instance, this example of the Islamic person, that was a very interesting story because he had a car accident in the middle of the desert in Iran, and he was brought to the hospital in time, and then he had his NDE. And during his NDE, he could see the operation room where he was, and he thought of his mother. And at the moment he thought of his mother, he was in the house where his mother was, and he saw that she was preparing dinner. She was in the kitchen doing stuff, not knowing that her son had been in such an accident. And of course, they couldn't talk to each other because he was there in spirit. But he also thought of friends of his, and then he was in the house with the friends. So he could be in more places at the same time. That I thought that was a very interesting thing that happened. It was also another NDE that really thought that the light he saw must have come from Mahdi. That's one of the main prophets in Islam. And another one thought it would be from Muhammad. So, it is, you see the light, you don't know exactly what it is. It's very big, very important. So what you do is you try to understand it from your own perspective, and then you label it with something, or either Muhammad or Mahdi or maybe Jesus. I don't know, but I think maybe these people they see, they really exist, like Jesus or Mahdi or Muhammad, and they are seen there.
I have interviewed people who have seen Jesus. However, one may describe Jesus as dark skin, dark hair, and the other one may say, no, he was blonde and blue eyes. The other one may say he was a light being, but they identify him as Jesus.
Yes.
However, I have been trying to find someone who has seen Muhammad, and I still have not found that person.
He is in my book
somewhere.
Okay. And there is also research done by people in Iran on NDEs from Islamic people. And what I thought that was interesting, that in Iran, someone would be doing research. He's also connected to IANDS. That's also very interesting. Yeah. And he found these people. One of them thought he had seen the Mahdi. So yeah, they exist. So it's not only Christianity that pops out there in NDEs. What I try to say to people also, that's also my message in my book on religions. It's the real thing that people see on the other side is much, much bigger than any one religion. So it even supersedes Christianity. It supersedes anything. It's so powerful, so big. Religions are also partly man-made. And I can go into that, but it's a lengthy story of how Christianity came about, how Jesus was defined as being the Son of God. You must understand that the first 300 or something years, Jesus was a very important person, but not divine, not a God. But that was made during one of the councils in Turkey somewhere. Then it was not Turkey, of course, but it's in that area. There were several councils, and one of them defined that he was the Son of God. And then they had to
it was in the first council in Nicaea
Yeah,
they
Nicaea,
discussed which of the two currents they were going to follow.
yes,
Was
yeah,
Jesus a man or was he the Son of God? So Constantine, the emperor, decided no, he's the Son of God. But
yeah,
it was a decision made by an emperor, basically.
yeah. And then 100 years later, they had another council where they decided that Jesus was only God and not also man. And that was decided because the Western bishops were there before the others, before the Orthodox bishops. And they closed the doors, and then they decided to do it like that. But it shows you that there are still Orthodox strands of Christianity where they don't believe that that's the case.
Right. I'm curious. Did you interview Danian Brinkley or AUDIBLE, the Muslims? Did you personally interview them?
What I did with my book was to find interesting quotes that are out there that people can see, access, and find themselves either in books or in videos in that are online, or submitted to the IANDS website or the NDERF website. Because I wanted to make it clear that I didn't make them up. No, I took them from a public source. So a lot of these people I spoke to myself, but there are also like Danian Brinkley. I didn't speak to him, but I read his book. So I took quotes from his book with permission of the publisher, by the way. But that's how it goes in America.
Okay, yeah. Well, great. So this is like an anthology. I'll have to read it. Can you show us the cover?
It's a picture made by Monet,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
called
Impressionist.
yeah. And this is why the painters that are impressionists are called impressionists, because this painting was scrutinized by journalists, and they said, "What a bad painting! It's not even finished. It's just an impression." And then he called it impression of a sunrise. And that made the impressionists. And that's why I wanted to call my book Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, because I think you cannot really understand what an NDE is if you read or hear just 1, 2, 3, or 10. You have to have more points of view. Let me give you just an example. If I would take you out in Amsterdam here to the Palace on the Dam, and I'll show you the Palace on the Dam from the dam side, you only see the facade, the front side. You don't see the back side, you don't see the sides, you don't see the roof, you don't see the interior. So it means that you need to be in more places to see more things, to have a better impression of what it is. The same with NDEs. You need to understand or hear or read more NDEs to get a good impression. That's why I had all these quotes, and I have arranged them in my book according to subject, like getting out of your body, getting into your body again. The light, life reviews, very interesting topic. Distressing NDEs. Why are we on Earth? Everyone is important. Things like that. All these kind of topics are there. There are 12 topics that I found quotes for.
Which are these 12 topics? Can you check the index and tell us?
Yes, I mentioned some of them already. So it's getting out of your body.
Okay.
Veridical observations is very important because they give you circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real. Veridical observations are, in fact, verifiable out-of-body experiences. Someone gets out of his body, roams around the crash site of the car where he died, or in the operating room, and sees the doctors, how they perform the operation, what happens to the car, whatever it is, and then come back into their body and tell them what they saw. And then it is checked, it is confirmed that it's really true what they have seen. So that means that they couldn't have seen these things from their body, but
Right.
they seen it anyway. So there's a whole chapter with those kind of circumstantial evidence. And then a chapter on that it's out of this world. It's so strange, this other world. You cannot, there's not enough words, not enough concepts in our language to explain what it is. About love, about the light, about life reviews is very important, because in life reviews, you can see what you do to others as if you are that other. There is no distinction between you and others. Very important chapter. Everyone is important. Distressing NDEs. We are interconnected. We are all one. That's what I try to explain. People say that in their NDE. They felt such an interconnection with everything, also with plants and with animals, but also with other people. We are even one. That's one of the conclusions that I came to. We are one. This big oneness, and we are part of that. Why are we on Earth? The way back, that's interesting. If you get out of your body and you have had the chance to speak about it, you have to go back again. So otherwise you can't speak about your NDE. And after effects, of course. People who have had NDEs suffer from after effects. They can be nice, but they can also be difficult to cope with. In general, people have need a long time to cope with their experience, especially people with distressing NDEs.
Yes. According to my experience, a lot of people say that it takes a long time to integrate these experiences, decades. I know.
On average, 7 years on average.
Yes. I've heard that story many times, and I also had like a near-death-like experience, and it took me 30 years to talk about it. I did not dare to mention it until several years ago. Dr. Yvonne Kaysen more or less talked me into it. But
I want to say also that people who have had an NDE without being almost dead, that happens too. You don't need to be almost dead or dying in order to have an NDE. Sometimes it happens in a situation where you have a psychological crisis. That there are many stories of people with an NDE in those kind of situations. Sometimes with meditation or a very intense prayer, and sometimes spontaneously. And what I hear from you, you had it during sleep, or I don't know how, but
yes.
It was sort of, you could mention it like a spontaneous NDE, but they are genuine NDEs, and you can decide on that because of the story. Your story, if you didn't say that it was during, how you got it, would really sound to me like it's from an NDE. So I would call that an NDE.
How many people were from other religions? For example, Buddhism, Hinduism. What were their experiences in the ones you mentioned in your book?
There is a woman from China who was brought up a Buddhist, but she went away from that religion and had her NDE. And what happened to her was that she was out. She was dying. Her mother came into the operating room, not into the room where she was, not the operating room. She was sort of in a state where she had to be taken to an operation. And then she saw that her daughter was dying, and she said, "Don't leave me." And she was screaming, and the daughter had her NDE, and in her NDE, she heard a voice. There was a voice, and then she thought, "Oh, that's my mother's voice, and she wants me to come back again." And then she turned around just 1 second, and then pop, she was back in her body. And these kind of things happen regularly, that people go into their body. But in this case, there was nothing really Buddhistic about it. But I remember that she was from that country and was brought up Buddhist. And with NDEs, it is that anyone can have such an experience. it's not only Christians, it's all kinds of people, all walks of life. So you can even be atheist and have an NDE. And with religions, what I noticed is that people become less religious after their NDE and more spiritual. And atheists become, well, they understand there is something else there that they didn't believe it was there. So, and then they look and they search for something, but they know that it's not only one religion. I think in general, you can't, there will be people that go into one religion, but in general, it would be like they would become more spiritual, looking for answers. Everyone wants to know where it comes from. It's good that there is a name for this, because it's important for people to just label it. We label everything. We want to put everything in boxes and label everything.
Have you noticed or studied childhood NDEs? Do you have any case in your book?
Yes, there's a wonderful case of a little girl, 8 years old, Christina. This is a very nice story. She had her NDE as a result of an assault. So not all NDEs are, well, in a medical situation in a peaceful way. In her case, it was horrible. She was abducted by two men and assaulted, and they wanted to drown her in a little pond there near to their house. And she was underwater with her head up, facing upwards. She could see through the water this guy and the sun shining above, and at the same time she was looking from above down to the scene. So that's another thing you regularly hear, that people have a dual perspective of where they are. They're in their body but also somewhere else. Now and then she saw, when she was above there, she saw her father coming to rescue. But then she had her NDE, and in her NDE she had this conversation with an elderly person, and she said, I think that's so funny. It's so nice. She's 8 years old, and she said, it couldn't have been anyone else than God. And then this person said, well, you have to go back, and life is easy. I'll explain to you why it is easy, because it's only 4 ingredients that you need to know. These are the 4 main ingredients that are there for you and for anyone else, by the way. And she says, and then God told her what those 4 are. And those 4 are love, be loved, just be, and experience life. So love, be loved, just be, and experience life. And then she was released back into her body again. And that's, I think, and she says, and that's also in my book, she says, well, these are the 4 ingredients, and we must know that life or earth is our playground. And you have to think about that, because it means that we just need to be. The moment you are here, that's already good. And you have to experience life. Whatever you do, the purpose of life is to experience it and to go about your life. That's what you can say. And the other 2 ingredients, love and be loved, requires some action. Those are, it's to love someone else, or not only one, but everyone, and nature and everything. That requires a lot of action, but also being loved. For people, sometimes it's difficult to be loved, but that's important too.
Does this happen recently, or is this an old NDE?
No. She is a grown-up person now, and she is still. I don't know how long it was ago. I think it was like 30 years ago, something. And people, it takes a long time before they can talk about their experience. It's difficult. And she was very depressed right after the experience, 8-year-old girl, because she saw that the other side was much nicer. And that's another thing that happens often to people with an NDE. They see that the other side is much nicer than our world, because in our world you don't find the unconditional love that they see there. So they have some kind of homesickness. They want to go back to that other area. Although they also understand that you shouldn't do it yourself. So it's not like suicide is a solution for this. So they know, in general, I know of a few cases that people try to commit suicide later. But in general, it is that they know there's a reason for everyone to be on Earth. So they need to go on and express their love, and because they feel that that's what they need to do. There's one Native American in my book, and
Okay.
that's an interesting story. She said, I was having my NDE, and the moment you leave your body is so nice because you don't feel pain anymore. You don't feel anxiety anymore. You don't feel stress. Everything falls away. And then she says, and when I went further, many other things fell away as well. It's like my consciousness that was left, that was the only thing left. Even my consciousness is dissolving in something we call the Godhead. That's exactly how the quote is. My consciousness was dissolving in what we call is the Godhead. So we dissolve, even our consciousness dissolves in this oneness, and there are so many quotes that point in the direction of oneness. We are one. And that's, for me, actually, I'll leave it up to the readers to come to their own conclusion based on all these quotes. But for me, if you'd ask me, it is unconditional love and oneness. And oneness, you have to try to take it to extremes. It means, it also comes out of life reviews. What I said just before is that if you see your life and you see what you did to others, you see it not only as yourself, but you see it also as the people that you are acting with, either in a nice way or in a less nice way. So you see what you did to others as if you are that other person. So there is no difference between you and others. And that's also what people say, we are one. It means a lot. It means that we all carry the divine within us. And some people say, we need to express that divinity. That's the only thing we need to do here. We know everything within us, and we have to express that.
Now, it is said that there are more NDEs than ever. And do you think this is creating, having an incidence on humanity? Do you think this will create like a new spiritual age?
I really hope so. And I always say that if people would really understand veridical observations and that they give circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real and that they are a first phase of our journey into our afterlife, then people would, I think, become more interested in the messages of NDEs. And the messages of NDEs is that we are all, that love is very, very important. It is as if everything is made of love. And the other thing that's important is that we are all one. So if I do something to you, I do it actually to myself. And I say sometimes that life is a zero-sum game. If I do something to you, it's that I do it to universe, to God, to us all, and to myself. I can't just think of doing something to you and walk away and think, well, that's it. I don't feel anything. You feel something. I do it to myself as well. And and I think that if people would really understand that, then they will change their lives and become more loving towards others and towards nature. And I think we all need that. There should be more love in this life on Earth, because at this moment there's a lot of things that are not so very nice.
What would you say to someone who is afraid of death or recently lost a loved one or has a terminal disease and is really afraid of dying?
Yeah, what can you say to someone like that? The only thing you can say is that there are NDEs, near-death experiences, that they give a good insight into what may be there. In any case, that life goes on, that it doesn't end with physical death, that there is a lot of evidence that life goes on. And you know, the other book that's very important is a book with also published by IANDS. Not only my book was published by IANDS, but The Self Does Not Die. This, for instance, contains hundreds of examples of NDEs with veridical observations. So they are the circumstantial evidence that life doesn't end with our physical death. Because your consciousness, it shows in many of these stories, your consciousness can exist without the body. It can go everywhere. Like, for instance, what I said about the Iranian guy, his consciousness could be in hundreds of miles away from where his body was and see what his mother was doing, and see what the friends were doing in their houses, which was not in the same location. I mean, that shows you that your consciousness is capable of so much more, and not only in place, but also in time. There are so interesting stories also in my book about that people can go through time and see things that still has to happen, and after a while, it happened. Like one woman that I spoke to, she had her NDE in '86, and she saw the financial crisis already then. And I had an interview with her before the crisis started, and she said to me, there is something coming up very soon, and it's this time because I notice how anxious everyone is at this moment in time, and it's happening, and it's going to affect a lot of people. She actually described to me the financial crisis, and I thought, wow, that's not the case. I'm an economist, and I thought, this is not true. And then a few months later, it's all started, and I phoned her back, and I said, that's amazing. You saw that in '86. That was 21 years before it actually happened.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I've seen also several cases of the people who I've interviewed have also foreseen the future. And there are many like secondary effects. Which would you say are the most common?
You mean actually the after effects. So those are there is a lot of them. In any case, there is no fear of death. People lose that in almost 100% of the cases. They feel that nature and other people are important. You see people change. An NDE is a life changer, and especially the people that surround the NDEer sometimes don't recognize the NDEer anymore because he or she is doing things totally different. Like if you were very interested in money and power, I know someone like that before his NDE, and then afterwards he totally changes, and that can sometimes lead to divorces. But other things are like a lower tolerance for light and medicine. You need less medicine after NDE in general. Feeling emotions from others, being psychic, being more mediumship, like having mediumship abilities. Funny things are like interfering with electricity. Sometimes computers stop working, watches most of the time stop working. And people sometimes have the ability to heal others. Healing is, and self-healing sometimes, very interesting stories also in my book on self-healing, but also healing others. So there's a whole bunch of after effects. And you can see that from before the NDE is totally different than after the NDE.
Well, great. I recommend the viewers to read your book. I'm going to include the link in the description. And thank you, Robert Christopher Copps. How do you prefer to be called, Robert or Christopher? Because I've seen that several of your books are signed by Christopher, and you are also known as Robert or Bob.
Yeah, my full name is Robert Christopher Copus, and I was born in the same country as you were born in, Venezuela.
Yes, interesting.
That makes another link between us. But Christopher is a nice name because it's the Christ carrier.
Right.
And I used to, I love this work, and it's also kind of carrying the light that I feel. That's why I called the book on religions. I mentioned my name as Christopher Copus, but I use now the full name, Robert Christopher Copus.
You're also a board member of IANDS.
I'm very happy to be on the board, and it's a very nice bunch of people doing a great job. And I feel like, I'm dedicated to international groups, and that's my job in the board. And if I look at the others, they are so good and at their work. They are so big, and so I'm feeling a little bit small there. But I'm doing a nice job with international groups.
How can people contact you?
Through my website, which is www.bobcopus, B-O-B, and then Copus, my name, COPPES.com. And there's a file that people can ask a question in and send away to me, and I'll always answer.
It was a pleasure having you, Bob. And I do want to...
It was wonderful to talk to you. Thank you for being on your show.
Yeah, well, I think we have to repeat this in the future. There are many topics we left out. I would really like to go into a deeper analysis of those 5 major religions you touch in your essence of religions. And
let's do that.
Continue talking about all the cases you've studied. Interesting. I congratulate you. I find your work fascinating.
Thank you. But likewise, I like your work too. You're doing a great job with your podcast and other things, your books, and so.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.